Okay. There we are. So if you don't want your image to appear, please just turn off your video feed. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce our guest for today. And her name is Holly Lassesen. And she runs, first of all, a quick history. She's with the Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club Big Brothers Big Sisters of Edmonton organization, which is an organization which has been around for an awfully long time, serving all of Edmonton and district. But Holly runs the PRISM program with BGC Bigs. That's the abbreviation that we use. And it's a program that facilitates mentorship for queer and trans youth to be matched with mentors who are also in the 2SL LGBTQ plus community. And having a mentor is in PRISM provides guidance and positive role modeling for youth and connections between folks in the community. Holly has a BA in philosophy with a focus on Indigenous mothering and the languages of science and religion, and an MA in ethics with a focus on human rights specific to self-determination and bodily integrity. Really happy to have you here, Holly. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone can hear me okay. If not, let me know. I can always yell louder. Yeah, as Eric said, I have my MA is specifically in bodily integrity. My focus of my thesis was on the right to not have surgeries or to have surgeries, depending on what you need. So for trans adults who opt for hormone therapy and surgery intervention, that probably we should respect their rights to their bodily integrity. I also discussed the historical way that we as a society have dealt with intersex babies, and that has been also surgical intervention, but on babies. And so that's non-consenting, and that's also an issue of bodily integrity. All of that sort of led me into working specifically in the community, and I found this work with BGC Bigs, which is great. And I meet only great people at my job, so that's awesome. I can tell you just a little bit about the program. This is like the third iteration of the program. It started out something sort of called Big Siblings, which was a little bit like kind of in the direction, but they weren't sure if they were able to do like a queer and trans youth mentorship program. Then we had a program called Queer Mentoring, which was also good, but then we've sort of moved it into this iteration of PRISM. Our mentees, the youth that come to us for mentorship, are ages 9 to 18, and they come from all different kinds of backgrounds, different races, different religions, different socioeconomic statuses, but they do have one thing in common, and that is that they are working through a gender identity journey, or they're working through their figuring out their sexual orientation. We have a lot of non-binary kids, like, it used to sort of be like, people transition from he to she or from she to he. We have a lot of young kids now who don't feel like either of those things fit them. So they are gender fluid, or they're non-binary, and they use they, them pronouns. And so we want to respect people's figuring themselves out. And one of the ways that we can do that is to provide mentorship program for them, where they are mentored by adults who are also in the community. Not everybody is apples to apples. I can give you an example. I have one pair where the mentor is a young trans man who's like fully transitioned, and the mentee is a trans boy who's about to start hormone therapy and about to start doing his physical transition. And so they're just so perfectly matched because the mentor is able to talk to the mentee about the sort of psychological and emotional side effects of taking hormones that your body is not used to yet. And that guidance, I think, is going to be invaluable, because while, his mom is supportive enough to put him in the program at least, she can't answer those questions and she can't talk to him about that. And so having these people who are, 5 steps ahead in their journey, and you're kind of on a similar journey, that guidance is just, it's invaluable. The young people, a lot of them, their lives are changed. They're shy, they're uncomfortable in their own bodies. I'm describing every teenager now, but some people have extra struggles on top of that, sort of what we call intersectional struggles. And those are things where if you're, you can talk about if you're a gay white man or if you're a Black lesbian, and how those different characteristics of your identity will intersect to create an exacerbated sort of social exclusion or lack of opportunity or oppression or systemic issues. So we look at those intersectional things and we see that young kids who are trans or queer I have the notes about it here. They have just sort of like higher rates of mental health issues, higher rates of depression, higher rates of isolation, higher rates of suicidal ideation, more prone to drug abuse. And there are issues, something I know actually after talking to Eric has been an issue with this group, housing. Finding housing can be really tough. And it's already tough to find housing, it's expensive and we have not enough of them. But if you find yourself trying to rent a place or move into a place, and the person renting just doesn't like you for their own personal reasons, and they have the right to not rent to you, you can find yourself being turned away over and over again. That can be further exacerbated by the fact that perhaps it's hard for you to get a job because of your identity. You don't have a steady work, it's even harder to find somebody who's willing to rent you a place, and this domino effect can happen. And what we see with the mentorship program is that some of the youth can see themselves in their mentors, and it gives them sort of like a trajectory towards a happy, healthy future. And they can see that that's a possibility because they have this role model who says, yeah, the saying, it gets better, it gets better. We all heard that before. Well, that's true. And, it's tough to feel hopeless. And a 15-year-old who's parents don't accept them and who are having a hard time getting friends at school and who maybe are like worried about getting housing as a youth, hopelessness can really take over. And what we are trying to offer is some sort of guidance on how to get through this toughest time of your life, how to work your way into a healthy adult part of your life, and how these people, how did you get jobs? How did you get housing? Where did you find those opportunities in your life? Because, I don't want to, the worry is you're going to go somewhere and be rejected. If there are safe spaces for you to apply for jobs, I know there are specifically queer and trans friendly businesses that advertise, like, we want to be inclusive. I know, everybody I know goes to the Carrot Cafe on 118. I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's, they're very intentionally inclusive in that way. And more and more places who have the guts and the moral compass to stand up and say, I don't care what you think, we're including everybody. We want to employ these people. We want to serve these people, whoever they are, whatever color they are, whatever sexual orientation they are. We're seeing more and more and more of that, which is really, really nice. And it's one of the reasons that this mentoring program is so good. I can comment on it a little bit that one of the catch-22s is that I need parental permission to enroll the kids. So, I have some parents who are so supportive, and it's great they enroll their kids and their kids still benefit. I have some parents who are, they love their kids and they want them to be happy. So they enroll them for the program because they're looking to give them the support that they can't give them, because they, I hear parents say all the time, well, I don't understand it. I don't understand this whole they them thing or something, and I'll say, okay, that's okay. If you want to learn about it, call me and I'll tell you. But in the meantime, if you are willing to enroll your child in this program, they're gonna have support that you're not able to give them. You might also learn something along the way from the adult who's mentoring them. It's a really great opportunity for everybody. I do training, little like online training sessions for volunteers that I'd like to expand to parents. I think the volunteers who volunteer with PRISM, they know the importance of affirming somebody's identity. They know the importance of using correct pronouns and the chosen names of the youth and stuff like that. So I do offer that to them just in case there's any little things that they don't know about pronouns or, you know, modern political stuff or whatever. But I'm really gonna try to focus. I'm like bugging my bosses to let me do it, to offer that training to parents so that parents can understand, because I do see a lot of parents who, as I said, they love their kids, but they dead name them and use the wrong pronouns for them all the time because it's hard for a parent to wrap their head around. They've known this kid their whole life as she, and now all of a sudden, you know, it takes a little bit of time to sort of reprogram those neurological pathways in your head. And I say that to the young folks too. You know, I'm only halfway through, but I can tell you that I'm aware that, you know, it's easier to learn things when you're younger. If you want to learn play piano, you want to learn a second language, you want to learn that when you're a kid, because it's just easier to get it in there. And so if you're talking about people who haven't put much thought into this sort of topic, who are, you know, 60, 70, 80 years old, and they're trying their best, but they keep automatically using your pronoun that they've always known you as, I really do try to remind young folks, you know, if people are trying their best, give them the credit for that, because mistakes are going to happen, and the longer you've been doing it a certain way, the longer it takes to like reprogram that. So, you know, I can't imagine what it feels like to be a 75-year-old trying to, like, you know, call a colleague a different name after you've called them a certain name for 20 years. It's just really tough.
Holly, how
yes.
do these young people come to your organization and to your attention?
Very good question. So when I first started here, I think there were mostly I have posters like this, which I'll show over here. I put all around. I stick them everywhere. I brought one to put here if you'll let me. And so we try to advertise. I think a lot of the kids, they have siblings with a big brother or sister. And so they're already involved with the agency, or they have siblings who are in like Boys and Girls Club, or who have mentorships in school. So we have a lot of different programs. So anybody who has a sibling in any of our programs, their parents will hear about these. I think that we have done some sort of advertising, I want to say, in schools, but that's now just getting to be more and more allowed, and maybe even now less with how things are going. I'm not sure. But we have social media presence. We have a whole page about it on our website, and sometimes we get like referrals. So a teacher will contact me and say, I have a student who I think could benefit from this program. A lot of the time I have counselors and therapists and psychologists call me and say, I have a client who I think would benefit from your program. Can you enroll them, please? And I have yeah, it's a lot of different ways, actually. I think and sometimes just parents who are looking for, go on the internet and look for ways, how can I support my queer or trans kid? And that hopefully will come up. So a lot of different ways. I'm working on getting it out there more. I really want to expand the program. That's my goal, is to like get it out. I would like to do some more stuff in schools. That's a little bit tough. I know schools who have GSAs. So those are, you know, safe space groups for queer and trans kids in the school that are run by teachers who support them. They've had me come to their meetings and talk to them a little bit. Some of them are interested in mentor, but some of them are 17-year-old kids who are 18, so that they can mentor younger kids too. I can say almost every single volunteer that I have for the program, when asked why do you want to volunteer for this program, they say, I wish that I had that when I was younger. I just wish that I had something like that, somebody to talk to that wasn't my parents, that maybe understood a little bit more, somebody who I could go to the Pride Center with, somebody who I could go to the Pride Parade with, somebody who I could, you know, research gender clinics with. all of those kinds of things, and not feel judged and feel accepted and affirmed. And so they're just the best volunteers because they know exactly what they were missing as youth. So they fill in those gaps so well, and they're just really, really great, supportive people. Sorry, look through here a little bit. I do talk a little bit about, I'm not sure if this is something you're interested in or no, but we do talk a lot about the different language that we use in the community. So obviously we have classic words, we have gay, we have lesbian, we have bisexual, we have those things. Something that some years ago, my brother, a concept my brother introduced me to was pansexual. And that's sort of, you know, as we say, there's a pantheon of gods in the Greek mythology, this whole bunch. Pansexual is sort of like, bisexual is like, okay, like men and women. Pansexual is, I recognize that there are much more than men and women. The gender is a whole spectrum, and I'm open to the spectrum of genders that exist. And so it's sort of like bisexual, but advanced, the rainbow version of it. We of course have transgender, those people who are transitioning. You know, not everybody does hormone therapy, not everybody does surgeries. Some people just present a certain way, or they have certain relationships, or they just go by a certain name. So that can look all kinds of ways. There's no right way or wrong way to do that. I know that more often now people are introducing themselves with their pronoun. I don't think I have mine here, actually I should, but it's good to, I think we try to tell volunteers to introduce themselves with their pronouns to the parents, for example, because I know a lot of folks see a certain face and hear a certain voice and they think, well, it's she, and maybe it isn't a she. So we try to get people to get those out there right off the bat. I do introduce families and volunteers to each other with the correct pronouns, but sometimes we need to sort of reiterate those things. I also, for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, generally, we have a partnership with Events Edmonton. So our matches can sometimes get free tickets. Often those free tickets are for like an Oil Kings game or a football game. And I had the youth in my program telling me, well, I hate sports. I'm into theater and like makeup and hair. Do you have anything for me? You know, and I thought, you know what, you're right. That's a good point. So I've been calling around, just shamelessly asking people for stuff. And we've got some great, so Edmonton Ballet has offered us for like every show, a couple of, 2 or 3 matches can go for free. We have partnerships with the Citadel. I've talked to the Royal Alberta Museum, and because of their government run, they can't give free tickets, but they do have a program that allows for support. Exactly. So they said, look into that. So I'm currently talking to them. I'm trying to get more artsy stuff for these kids who are interested in that kind of thing. So I've really been working on like focusing on what kids need, supporting parents, that kind of thing. I have a hard time not signing up for the program myself because I meet so many great kids, but I would burn myself out if I was 7 days a week with this agency. So I have to take my time away, unfortunately. We do have, also just to mention with the pronouns, we do have folks now who, some are he, she, he, him, some are they, them. I do have some kids who are she, they, and they're happy with either of those things, or they feel more comfortable dressing and being a certain way today and more comfortable dressing and being a certain way tomorrow. And so they gender fluid or gender flux, as they say, will move through identities as they feel fit. I think that's something I've heard a lot of older people say, well, that doesn't make sense. How am I supposed to, I can't read their mind. How am I supposed to know? You can ask, they don't mind. You can absolutely ask, but it does make sense to me knowing that all the struggles people go through, the hormones and teenager stuff, going back and forth between these things to try to find where you fit is a really good strategy, actually, and it works for a lot of young kids. So I'm trying to be as supportive of that as I can when I'm talking to parents who are like, I don't get it, that kind of thing. I can talk about a little bit about why the kids want a mentor. And a lot of the time they want somebody to talk to other than their parents. Doesn't mean they don't get along with their parents. Sometimes there's stuff you just don't want to talk about with your parents when you're a young person. And having a trusted, safe adult is a really good thing to do. We do have restrictions on typical big brother, big sister matches. They, for example, mentors are not sex educators. They're not allowed to talk to them about sex ed or, advise them on which dating apps are the best to use. Those kinds of things are off limits because it's not appropriate for the relationship. And that makes sense. And we want to maintain those boundaries. In the PRISM program, it's a little more gray because, well, you're also not meant to be a sex educator. Talking about sexual orientation and gender identity is sort of foundational to the point of the mentorship. So I do have different sort of like guidelines for my volunteers that say, if they ask you about this thing, if they ask you about how did you deal with your hormone therapy, or how did you deal with your parents if that was difficult, all that stuff is really, really great to talk about. What I have done is created what is called a warm referencing list. So all these kids, they know the Pride Center's there. They know Out Loud is there in St. Albert. They know Firefly is there at the U of A. They know that they're there because they're all on the internet all the time. So they know that those are there. Doesn't mean that they feel confident and comfortable to walk into those places to ask for guidance or advice or literature or resources. And so what I've done in many cases is I've contacted those places and I've said, give me a name of somebody there who's willing to have your name on my list. I'm not going to publish it all over the place, but I give it to my volunteers. So if a mentee says something, if they have sort of sex ed based questions or questions that fall outside the realm of the scope of the mentorship, I don't want a volunteer saying, well, I can't really talk about that with you, and leave it at that. We want kids to access reliable, safe information. And it would be irresponsible not to help them if they have these questions. So I've created a warm referencing list that has, the name of somebody from Firefly, the name of somebody from the Pride Center. And that way the volunteer can say, what, that's a great question. Who would be a really good person to talk to about that? John Smith at the Pride Center. And kids, the statistics show that kids are much more likely to use those resources if a trusted adult names another person that they can ask for when they go there. And so that's been really an effective way to deal with this gray area conversations that can kind of, you answer one question, you answer another question, it's no problem. Leads down a path into some more questions that you can't answer. You don't want to abruptly stop the conversation like that and just say, well, that's it. So we are trying to create resources and access to resources. I'm also trying to create opportunities for the matches to do volunteer work together. So for example, I'm waiting on the edge of my seat for the Pride Center to get commercial certification for their kitchen. And once they do, they're going to cook meals that they give out to like community family nights, they call them, but it's anybody who comes will get fed. And once that happens, then I have matches who the mentor and the mentee will go together to cook and distribute food, which is just win-win-win, I think, because they get to spend time together, they get to connect with the Pride Center, they get to help folks who maybe aren't as fortunate as they are, whose parents aren't supportive enough to sign them up for a program like this, but rather kick them out of the house or something like that. So we do a lot of dealing with like housing, stuff like that. As I said, though, parental permission is necessary. So there are a lot of young folks I meet who I would love to have them in the program and register them for the program. And their parents just don't want them to. Although I will say I have some situations where it's usually the mom that the kid lives with. It's not always the case, but in these two cases that was true. A youth who lives with their mom, they have joint custody with their dad, and the mom wants to put them in the program, and their dad hates that idea. And I need both of their parents' permission. And so I have twice now successfully spoken to a couple of fathers and put their mind at ease that we're not pushing the gay agenda or do whatever they think that we're going to do with their kids. and gotten their verbal permission to register their kids. So, and
The concept's really the same as Big Brother, right?
it is,
Not
it is.
really that different.
But that's the thing, and they think, well, you're gonna be just doing, you're gonna do gay stuff with my kid or whatever, and it's no, it's the same. They're gonna go rock climbing, they're gonna go swimming, they're gonna go to the art gallery, they're gonna talk about budget, they're gonna help with their homework, all the stuff you imagine with Big Brother, Big Sister, that's what this is. The only difference is that if they have questions relating to community issues, they can ask those, and the parents and the youth know going into it that this volunteer knows and accepts and affirms your gender identity, your sexual orientation, that this is a safe person who has been through it and who understands. And it just makes the youth more comfortable. And that's what I say, you know, and they say, well, it's just a phase and I don't want them pushing them into it too far or whatever. And I say, well, let's just say it is just a phase. Let them go through it then, see where it goes. But in the meantime, let them feel comfortable with their mentor as much as possible, you know? Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions about anything I
Now,
said? I
does
go on and on.
someone that's interested in being part of the program, applying to be part of it?
Yeah, there's an online application for volunteers. If you have issues with doing online applications, you can also contact the Riverdale office, I believe it is. And it's just an application process where you give basic information about yourself. And then you go in for an interview, which is, I've seen them, very long and very extensive, and it talks all about you as a person. They ask you a lot of questions that as you answer, they can get to know you. They ask you about your childhood, your relationship with your parents, all that kind of stuff. Who your friends are, do you have stable social groups? What have you done for work? Of course, we do regular criminal history checks, child welfare checks.
Holly,
Yes.
You mentioned out loud St. Albert. I'll just let you and others know that in 2 weeks' time, Paige Billings is coming to give a talk and talk about outlife, St. Albert, and someone named Toby that I've forgotten
Yes.
his surnames.
Yeah.
The two of them there.
Holly, what would the commitment be in terms of time?
It reminds me. Sorry.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble interference, but if you try again, let's see if you can ask your question again.
What would the commitment be in terms of time for the mentor?
Time commitment.
A time commitment. So for all mentorships, we expect people to commit for a year at least, as far as duration. And the meetings can be once a week for an hour, once every 2 weeks for a couple of hours, or, you know, a couple times a month, that kind of thing. So just on a regular basis, but it is flexible based on availability and the age of the kid and what other activities they have going on.
How would I begin? How would I start to apply as a mentor?
Yeah, well, there are, so online, you can see, and I'll leave it here with Eric, online, bgcbigs.ca, we have a page specifically for PRISM. And on that page, that's where you can apply, where you put in just the basic information, you hit send, and that information goes to our enrollment team, and then they'll contact you and talk to you about what might be best for you based on your availability. And sometimes that's maybe in school mentoring, sometimes that's maybe in the clubs mentoring, sometimes that's one-on-one with PRISM. And yeah, they have all kinds of options. And so they'll be able to best work out with you what that might look like for you.
Very excited about this. I would love to do it.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it. Well, I'll definitely leave some information here with Eric that he can share with the group, anybody who wants to know. And I'll also leave my own contact information. So anybody who has any questions, who wants to contact me for any reason, absolutely should feel free to do that. I'm always happy to hear from everybody. Yeah, anybody who likes the program anyway, I'm especially happy to hear from.
Okay, and I just, sorry, I didn't catch your name at the beginning, but if you could send an email to agingwithpride, YEG, @gmail.com. That's our general, if you would send me an email there, then I'll put you on our mailing list for future events, as well as being able to send out any information that we have today. If you would mind doing that for us, please. Okay?
That would be great, yeah. I have mentored before, and it was a wonderful experience. I think for both of us, or all of us, and I'd love to do it again now that I'm old. Yay. I guess I was then too, but, yeah.
Thank you very much. Larry, you
Yeah.
have a-
Yes.
I'm reminded of the early days of AIDS Network when not mentor, but sort of support people for PWAs was the thing, and enormously valuable and enormously important that boundaries are respected.
Mhm.
So that's sort of preamble to ask you, and I don't mean this to be negative, it's an
Please.
enthusiastic problem. What problems have you encountered with the mentorship program, or have there been no problems?
Well, no, I mean, sometimes we do have some problems. I mean, some of those are as simple as a volunteer or a parent is trying too much to be friends with the other when really the focus should be the kid. It's not the worst problem. It's motivated from friendliness, but it is sort of one of those boundaries that we try to respect. We do reiterate and reiterate the boundaries that we expect people to hold. And so, you know, we'll do sometimes some of the worst things that we have to deal with across the board are disclosures of abuse. So we do have sometimes cases where a youth will disclose abuse to their mentor, and their mentor is then obligated to share that information with me, and then I'm obligated to pass that information on to Children and Family Services, and it can be a very emotionally stressful experience for the volunteer. And what we want to do, you know, our focus is of course children, but we don't want to lose good volunteers. So we want to support them as much as possible. So some of these really, like, you know, they think, oh, it's going to be fun, we're going to go skating, you know, and then all of a sudden they have this sort of like heavy bomb dropped on them and they don't know what to do. We really have to like support them through that. We've had a couple of, you know, and it's not because of the mentorship program, obviously, but children who are suffering from mental health issues or from depression or whatever, sometimes they do things like self-medicate, and then they're not in a good state, and then they're not responsive to their mentor, and the mentor feels like responsible in some way, which they're not for that. And other than that, we have had our social media policy, for example, is get to know each other first and have an open discussion with the parent and the child and the volunteer about what you want your social media relationship to look like, if any. We can't totally restrict that because there's no way really to police that, but also a lot of people use those things, as you said, WhatsApp, people use those to communicate because you can have a group chat. So the volunteer and the child can have a conversation and the parent can see the entire thing and add what they want. And that's very useful. So we don't want to restrict that, but we have had issues where volunteers maybe were a little too excited and like maybe posted some identifiable information about the youth on their social media. And it's not a good idea. That's a boundary being crossed. That's not respectful of privacy and confidentiality. And, you know, we have a lot of parents who are worried about the safety of their kids right now. They're worried about when they leave the house and go to school, and they don't need any extra focus being publicized about their kids when they're worried about them just being able to walk safely down the street. So that's been one thing that was a major problem that we had to deal with, not in many cases, in one case, but the one case was serious enough that we really had to clamp down on that. So And other than that, I think one of the only problems is that I can't support the kids whose parents don't want them to let me do that. That's really tough, and that's something I'm always trying to find a workaround for. I don't know how to do that. I think about it all the time and I talk to people about it all the time, but if we break any rules or push too many buttons, we risk the program, we risk losing the program. So I'm trying to navigate that a little. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so, say perhaps a little bit more about what kind of relationship you've been able to establish with schools and whether, schools are, they have changed a little bit or how they can help with some of the kids you have, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a tough one for teachers right now. I've been to East Glen High School. They have a great GSA with great teachers supporting them. And they welcomed me there. I got to talk to them a little bit. I find that schools that have GSAs are kind of, that's my doorway into the school. That's sort of like that bridge between the restrictions that the school has and what I want to do. So the GSAs have been good. East Glen School is good. I do a lot of work with Firefly, which is the U of A, that's a university, but they offer education to youth in schools. And so they talk sometimes about the program. And we do have the GSA conference coming up the weekend after next weekend. And I'm going to be there all day, talking to all of these kids from all different schools and all their teachers who want to support them. I think some schools, I know that the French Catholic schools, I think currently are the most restrictive ones in the city. I learned that from the Francophone facilitator with the agency. She told me that. And she's also queer, so she would recognize those kinds of things. And she said that's a problem, but that's a sort of a cultural thing, and it's going to evolve as it's going to evolve. But other than that, it depends on the teachers in the school, I think, because there's a lot of Catholic schools who have great GSAs and a lot of public schools who don't have them. And I think there's sort of the environment that's fostered and supported depends largely on the teachers who want to do that. So it's everywhere from great to not so great with the schools and my relationship with them. But I'm hoping the GSA conference will, I don't know, create some networking opportunities for the program in different schools. Yeah.
If these youth are under 18, right?
Yes.
Would they really feel comfortable with elderly people? Like, I'm 63, and I've always found younger people gay, avoiding older gay people. So it's like, so I'm just wondering how they feel about how old their mentor should or should not be, or does it matter?
Different people have different feelings about it, parents and youth. Some of them I think are totally open to it, and some of them I think you're right. You make a good point about that. This is something I've talked about at length. One of my goals in the program is, and I see it happening to some degree, is to bridge the age gaps within people, like between people within the community, because you see what it was like for a gay person or trans person, let's say in high school in the 60s or 70s, looks a lot different than it was for a gay person in like maybe the 80s or 90s. And that again looks very different from what it's like now. And we have this very rapid social evolution, which means that even my brother, who's 6 years younger than me, when we talk about our experience being young and being in high school and being queer, it's very, very different. And so trying to like find the things that people relate on so that they don't hyper focus on those differences is one of the goals.
When you're matching them, do you ask the mentee, does it matter if the mentor is over 50 or under 70 or?
We talk to them a little. Yeah, we do. We say, what kind of qualities would you like in a mentor? Yeah, and so I feel like I currently don't have any senior volunteers on my matching list. So I don't ask about 70-year-olds specifically because I don't have any. But knowing who's on my list of volunteers waiting to be matched, I do ask about those things specifically. What kind of activities are you into? And one of the matching criteria is we talk to you about your interests and your hobbies, your values, those kinds of things. So that's what it's largely based on. But I'm not like sneaking anybody anywhere, you know, I'm very upfront about all of those things because I want the matches to be successful. And that's only gonna happen if people are comfortable, but it's a very good point, and it's a valid point, and it's a concern in some cases and not in others. It really is case dependent.
Can I do a throw in on that?
Please, yes.
I think, you know, part of the problem is the socialization and the social expectations. As an older gay man, I think every young gay person thinks I'm gonna be recruiting them. And a lot of young are trying to take advantage of them. And as a lot of young people have been told, watch out for the, you know, these older gays are gonna try to groom you or trying to take advantage of you. Big Brothers Big Sisters PRISM program is a safe environment. And we know that the youth have been told what good boundaries are. And the mentors have received extensive training on what boundaries are and that sort of thing. So we're going in knowing, the youth is going in knowing I'm gonna be matched with a safe person who's not gonna try to take advantage of me. And the older person is going in saying, I know that the youth has been told I'm a safe person, that my reference has been checked. And so that, you know, we could start with an equal relationship. And I have to disclose, yes, I am a gay man, and yes, I have been a mentor for many years.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm saying that having a social relationship with a young person through bigs is very, very different than just striking up a friendship with a young person, because there are definitions around it, there's boundaries around it, and there's expectations, and there's also follow-up to see how is. I think what the most important part for me as a mentor was the follow-up, it's a facilitated friendship. So the first couple of months, you know, I get regular calls from my caseworker saying, how are things going? You know, and the youth would be getting those same calls, how is it going? So that if there was anything that, well, geez, you know, I'm not quite.
Well, how old were you when you mentored?
Well, okay, so my first little brother turns 57 later this year.
Okay.
So obviously I was only 2 when that's,
Okay.
you know, I was 30,
Yeah.
I was 30 when that started.
Yeah, you were much younger.
Yeah, but and truth be told, so I'm still informally. First of all, I still have a relationship with that 57-year-old, which is a really.
Yeah, that's great.
To have
Yeah.
a lifelong friendship is something that's totally amazing. But I also have informal mentoring relationships with a 30-year-old, a 26-year-old, and a 24-year-old, 3 brothers. That came to me through a different sort of process, but started basically through bigs, and then said, okay, well, we're just gonna continue on as friends. The gay, I've mentored both gay and straight youth. And for me, it's just a question of friendship. On the sex education, quite frankly, they probably knew a hell of a lot more than I did, first of all. And secondly, a lot of any conversations around that tended to be, what is the emotional reaction? I took somebody out last night and I thought we had a great time, and now he won't respond to my texts. Yeah, how do I deal with that rejection? You know, not rejected at school, just rejected by another person. Those types of emotional questions, that's what I found. Like, I got more, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Please.
Hijack the meeting. I don't mean to be an expert on anything. I just thought I would throw that in because I thought it was an important part.
Yes, of course, yes.
I just wanted to add a little bit different perspective on this issue that Dawn brought up, and I think it's good if people of any age can connect with people that are of different ages than they are. It fosters intergenerational friendship, and connection and communication, which I think is also a plus in our society, because I think older people, especially older people who are part of the LGBT community, have a disadvantage in the LGBT part and in the age part, as they're viewed through society. So I think if we could find ways to break down both of those barriers, I think it's also helpful.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's one of the things. I think maybe there are some youth who are worried if you're from an older generation that you're not going to be as open or accepting. I think that there's great opportunities to prove them wrong in the best way. Yeah, does anybody else have any questions about anything I've said?
Where do you get your funding? Did I miss that?
Oh, that's a very good question too. We have a number of funders. We, of course, we apply for grants from the government all the time as much as possible, which everybody should do. And we have United Way is our biggest funder. We have other funders, so like my program specifically has different funding channels because of the nature of the program and its inclusivity. But United Way is the #1 funder for BGC Bigs in Edmonton. And other than that, there's a smaller list of funders, I think actually that can even be found on the website. Yeah.
And is it because of the nature of where you get your funding that you can only deal with kids who have parental permission?
Well, I think, I don't know if it's where we get our funding or if it's our insurance or if it's just simply our own best practices policy. But there is just certain things that, like, we don't want to get sued. We don't want any parents like accusing us of anything. We don't want any parents basically being upset with us for the program that their child is in. So it's something that we want to be very upfront about, because if a parent would feel that we were dishonest with them about that, to try to talk to their kid about something that they didn't know, we're not going to foster a healthy relationship with that parent. And we need that because, as Eric said, we do regular follow-ups. Every match that I have, I call them once a month or once every 2 months. And I ask them a lot of questions. What have you been doing? Where have you been going? How often? Do you have any secrets between you? Have you had any sleepovers? I have to ask like all kinds of like questions. If you're under 11, are you sitting in the back seat of the car? Like safety questions are included in that. So, and I have to ask those things to the parent too. So we need them to be responsive to us.
How young are they?
I have a couple 9-10-year-olds in the program.
I was about 12 when I
Yeah,
sort of was aware of my
yeah.
orientation with 9 or 10.
Well, that has a lot to do with parents
Yeah.
too. Like if you're 9 or 10 and you want to be non-binary, you want to come out as gay or whatever, I think the relationship with your parents has a big effect on that. So
I just wanted to add just on your question about being paired with an older person. I don't know if you guys have heard a lot even in the regular program, but we hear so much feedback of people missing out on grandparent connections and kind of those opportunities. So I can see it being a deterrent that they're getting partnered with an older person, and that we have so many people like looking for that. That I think that if anyone's interested in signing up, I think that people would probably welcome that in some cases.
yeah. Well, and through the interview process, then they find out a lot about, where you live, like your mobility, all those kinds of things. So, yeah.
All these, I think, are opportunities for education, because it's sort of safer to deal with these topics in a group than it is on a one-to-one situation. One other factor, I have a trans niece, and I have watched her mother go from a sort of fear-driven horror to being, a loving mother again. And so is there a way, I guess, that you have of reaching, and perhaps the fathers you talked about who changed their opinions would be a way of keeping in contact with, the true homophobia, you're not going to do much, but the people who are a bit iffier and look as though they might be malleable, anything from a newsletter to whatever.
There are a lot of resources for those parents. PFLAG, there are specifically for parents who are having a difficult time. There are a lot of resources, and I do recommend those resources. And I often, if I find that it's not too risky, I will kind of be a little bit harsh and say, listen, you're not gonna change your kid. You're just going to change your relationship with your kid in a really negative way, because they're not gonna wanna talk to you, they're not gonna trust you, and they need, regardless of what you agree or disagree about their life, they need a safe space, they need support, they need love in their life. So, and a lot of the time then they don't like to admit that I'm right, but it's clear that I am, so. Yeah,
It's interesting, the one person in the family who retained his calm and collected attitude was my father,
awesome.
her grandfather, and who said, I had a sister who I think was a little funny, and his language may not have been appropriate, but his love was very apparent.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, older folks have lived a lot of life. They know what is and what is not worth getting all worked up about, I think, which is a real bonus of that sort of experience, that life experience, yeah.
I'm just going to mention, because you mentioned about tickets, et cetera, that another two groups might be the Brian Webb Dance Company, right, as part of the community to begin with, and then Alberta and Edmonton Ballet, I think would be interested in providing some tickets.
I talked to the coordinator from Edmonton Ballet. She was amazing,
Oh,
and
yeah,
she
sure.
did, what was the first one, Brian Webb?
Yeah, the Brian Webb Dance Company.
Thank you.
See, Joan unmuted and if she was.
Yes, yeah, I have a comment, a question. This is so awesome, Holly. Like you just give me such hope when I hear stuff like this. It's like I get kind of pessimistic listening to the news. But I'm just wondering, do you have any contact or much contact with rural kids from the rural areas? Or is there any outreach stuff like what you're doing that you know of?
Yeah, so the agency, well, it's nationwide, we have national standards that we have to follow. Each regional agency is independently run, so Edmonton and area includes like Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, Fort Saskatchewan, we have Millet, Leduc and Nisku. I have one volunteer all the way from Camrose, which was my hometown, who's willing to drive here once or like 4 or 3 or 2 times a month to mentor. So we do sort of reach out, but we find most of them are centered in like towns or cities in the surrounding area.
Right.
But I do know that our St. Albert facilitator has recently matched a farm youth with a different farm mentor sort of out in the countryside. It's just a little bit logistically tougher, and we sort of take what we can get. We find more people in the city are signing up for the program on the mentor side and on the mentee side both.
Right. Well, thank you.
Possible.
Thank you.
And
Camrose Girls Rock.
Are you from Camrose?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I just add that there's the Alberta Mentoring Project, which BGC Biggs was one of the creators or founders of. And the Alberta Mentoring Project is trying to work out to extend mentoring out further into the province, because with anything, we always know if you're in the city, if there's a resource, great.
Yeah.
But your chances of finding it out in the rural community are less. So the Alberta Mentoring Project is trying to take everything that we're learning in the large cities like Edmonton, Red Deer, and Calgary, and trying to extend that out to the rural population a little bit better. But you certainly need a certain economy of scale or a certain mass to have a program like this running. And so I think one of the things that we're really focusing on in the mentoring, in the Alberta Mentoring Project right now, is trying to not only get the rural communities to start working more on increasing mentoring, but also to work a little bit more on the diversity and inclusion piece. Because certain attitudes in the rural, you're always surprised. Sometimes the rural can be totally accepting, and sometimes it can be And sometimes somebody in the big city could be a total redneck, so you never know what to expect, but that's just to let you know, Joan, there is an effort to try to extend things out more into the rural communities, but it's difficult on so many fronts, on so many different resources.
Right.
We're at about 5 to 11 right now. I guess, Holly, are there any final items that you would like to add?
No, I think I mean, I can talk for hours and hours, but I'm not gonna do that. So I will just leave some information here, for anybody who wants it. Again, any questions that you think of later, you can reach out to me. That's no problem. And if anybody wants to apply to volunteer, you can do that online. If you're having difficulty, again, you can call me. I'll help you out. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, by the way. It makes me really, really happy to know that this group of people exists. Because, you know, everybody has ideas about older folks and diversity and acceptance and all these things. And it's just I love when those ideas are just proven wrong, as I said.
Super. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm great for with your contacts with the arts, whether it might be someone at Victoria School who would know, who would have contacts that you might.
It's a very good idea. I can't ask. I have a lot of kids who go there.
So next week, Larry, can you talk about what we're doing next week?
Rachel, we would talk better. It's the art card, which I must say personally, I haven't mastered, so I'll be pleased to hear it.
Yeah, we're gonna have Edmonton Transit present on the new art program and some of the ways to get it and concerns and the rollout and all those things that everyone is facing, so they are.
I got new, I've already got one for years, so
Okay.
will they change it?
No, it's new to some people
Oh,
that
yeah.
didn't know it was coming, cause they just made changes to the regular seniors bus pass program, and now they're rolling out the art program, so it's just. Kind of getting the, kind of a mess and kind of trying to get the information out there, so, and then some seniors are being told if you forget to swipe when you get off, you're gonna get charged, I don't know, lots of misinformation and. Questions, and so just a chance to have them here, so they'll be here next week. You mean?
I can't remember to stop off, like I got off the LRT and I walked away and went to go back.
That's what someone else shared with me, they find it really difficult to have to, whereas their other card, they just kind of had hanging, it was just visual, to now have to, yeah. So next week, you can tell Edmonton Transit and everything you think about it, I'm sure it'll be receptive.
Listen.
And if that's a success, we should have another one on how to use your new television remote.
Yeah, do all the training.
Listen, thank you, our folks online for attending today. Thank you for the folks that are here. Folks that are here, of course, get the benefit of some coffee afterwards if you'd like to stay and chat. But please do join us next week, and also tell your friends about this program. If you have any questions, just forward them on to Aging with Pride, YEG, all is one word, @gmail.com. I'll certainly filter through that and send comments on to Holly or whoever else needs.
And let me reiterate that in 2 weeks' time, it will be out loud St. Albert, which I think will be an exciting question.
Super.
That's
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Can you close
Hey,
this up there?
great.